So on the Sportster here, I ran into a little issue with the speedometer. Whenever they come from the factory, they've got a gearbox that goes on the axle, and that has a just a mechanical shaft or a cable that spins and goes to a speedometer that's mounted on the handlebars. Well, this one didn't have any of the stuff whenever I got it, and I switched it over to the Springer front end, put all this Fat Boy parts on it. So I was trying to find a way to get a speedometer mounted inside of this cluster, and it's not perfect, but what I ended up doing, the ones that I was looking at for the Fat Boys go to the transmission, or they have a speed sensor that comes off and comes up to the speedometer, or well, it's goes to a controller into the speedometer, and I didn't have all the parts to make that work either. This was, I think, $80 off of Amazon. It was a Samdo, I guess. There's the model number. It's a GPS speedometer, and it's got 3 wires that hook to the back of it. One of them's a backlight, the other one's the switched power going to the speedometer, and the other one's a ground. All that was already in here with the switch and with the lights that I'd hooked up for the signal. And there's a little speed sensor that I've got hanging right here, or tied in. That goes to that's the antenna for this unit, and everything seems pretty accurate with it. I do have one big gripe. This model, there's 2 different types of GPS speedometers I saw online, and I didn't want the signal lights and everything in this one because I have them on the strip here. This one has 2 studs that are coming off the back with a strap that goes around it and a nut that tightens on each side. Those nuts, me tightening them up with by hand with a socket, on my, just holding the socket, twisting it, I snapped one of those studs off and had to super glue it back on. I used CA glue. To make this fit, I had to take some stainless that I had laying around, and I used I can't remember the size, but I used a large hole saw and made two rings, or two big washers. And then I went back behind it with 3 3/8 hole saws, and went through both of those plates and made the adapter ring. So what I have is the gauge goes through one ring and then into the cluster, and then another ring's on the back of it, and then the amount for the gauge goes on the back side of it. This model, you don't reset the trip on it, so this gauge has had 25 miles put on it since I put it together. There's no reset that I could see for it. It's just a speedometer with a backlight in it, and that's it. But at least I got some kind of indication of how far I'm going now too. That's the things. It seems to be a really good gauge for the money, and it met some needs that I had, in getting a speedometer that works without having the cables. It's just easier setup, and most likely, if I go to fixing that Blazer over there, I'll probably go with some gauges set up, something like that, just so I don't have to fight with the transmission, the sensors and everything coming off of it. I'm kind of liking it. I think it's what I'm going to use on the mini truck stuff when I need something to just work for me. I think it's a good product. Hope it helped if anybody has purchased one. They're trying to figure out how it wires up. The 2 wires, you just tie them together on like a bike here, because once power's on, everything should be on. our headlights come on anyway. So I just wired it in with the switch. Once power's on, the backlight's on. The GPS sensor it's just a cable that twists on the back of it, and they're pretty straightforward. That's my speedometer solution that I went with. Still got some dress up stuff to do, but baby steps.